don't need a high-end designer or a lot of money to get a luxe look. Be your own interior designer.
This is Affordable Interior Design, the podcast.
Here's your host, Betsy Helmuth.
The first question comes from Renee in Atlanta. Renee writes, Betsy, I have a chair rail in my hallway. Is this weird? Should we take it down? Our house is trying to be comfortable mid-century modern. The architecture is a mix of modern and traditional ranch. Well, Renee, I was just working on a home that was a colonial, probably built in the 60s in Westchester. And they had a chair rail all through the hallway as well as up the stairs. And they were asking me the exact same question. Should we just rip it out? I mean, what's it really doing? And I gave it some good thought because anytime I make some kind of architectural change, and I know that this is somewhat of a superficial change, you could easily just pop it off with a crowbar and putty up those holes, maybe do some light resurfacing of the wall, and you'd never know it was there. But is it doing anything for us? Would I put it in? No, probably not. But design-wise, could it add some visual interest? And if you're just planning on treating the area below the chair rail the same as the area above the chair rail, in other words, the same color of paint, the same type of wallpaper, if there's not going to be a difference in treatment above or below, I would just say get rid of it, right? What is it really doing? It's a piece of trim that's probably the same as the color of the other trim in your home, like the baseboards, the door frames, the window frames. It's probably in a different finish like semi-gloss or pearl, whereas the walls are matte, flat, or eggshell. So maybe there's some kind of color contrast, but above and below there's no change. Well, then what's the point, right? But if it could help us stylistically, for instance, the space I designed in Westchester, we decided to give the hallway and the stairway, which were otherwise pretty boring, pretty architecturally neutral. There were no windows. The light fixtures were pretty simplistic. The ceilings weren't high. There was really nothing interesting about those areas. So I decided to keep it. And instead, we're doing kind of a slate blue below the chair rail, and we're doing like a mid-tone gray above the chair rail, and it ties in beautifully with the rug and the tones of the pieces that I've selected for that living room. And the hallway leads right off the living room, up the stairs, all the way to the third floor from the first floor. So I think it could really add a dynamic visual element, an opportunity for color, because I'm not going to do the whole hallway in that slate blue. It would just feel dark and cavey with no natural light. But I think that it could really draw the eye up and get you excited for what's on the third floor. The only thing that's strange in her situation, and you might find it strange in your situation, is where does the chair rail end? Lucky for her, there was a very natural conclusion to both the chair rail and the wall with the chair rail at both the beginning of the hallway and the third floor end of the hallway. So it was quite clear where we would end the paint color, or in some cases where you might end the wallpaper. Whenever I have a chair rail, whether it's a dining room or in this case a hallway, I like to do the heavier thing at the bottom and the lighter thing at the top. So for instance, you heard me say that I'm putting the slate gray, which is the visually heavier, darker, weightier color at the bottom, and I'm doing that mid-tone to light gray at the top, which feels lighter. A lot of people, especially in a dining room, would do wallpaper above the chair rail and would do a paint color below. I often do that myself in spaces that are more transitional or traditional. And when I do that, I make sure that the wallpaper feels lighter, even if it has quite a pattern. Maybe the background color is very light, maybe the background color is even white, Or if it's busy and isn't necessarily light in color, pattern, or even texture, I'll make sure to do something quite weighty at the bottom. So, say I'm using, like I did the other day in an apartment just down the road from me here on Main Street, we did like this mid-tone beige grass cloth, which has this beautiful woven texture, feels very natural but controlled. From afar it looks just like a very subtle pattern, but up close you really can feel that texture and see all those different shapes of fibers coming together. Well, that went above the chair rail. And below the chair rail, I picked the deepest tone from the grass cloth because there's lots of different colors, even though it's only beige. There's lots of different hues of beige within that grass cloth. I picked the darkest one that almost felt like a brown or taupe. It did have sort of the gray qualities as well, making it like a deep mushroom. Well, I put that paint color below the chair rail, and the chair rail was the same color as the trim throughout, which was like a creamy, like china white. It all came together beautifully. It could not look more luxe. And I wouldn't have been able to achieve such a beautiful layered effect if I hadn't had the chair rail. So these are some things to think about. But going back to what I'd mentioned before, if you don't have a clear cut end and a clear cut start on either side of the chair rail, if it just kind of ends in oblivion or tapers with a little curved cut piece and there's not a clear delineation on the wall, it's very hard to do a different treatment above and below, and then maybe we just eliminate the chair rail. Renee, I hope that helped. That's a long winded way of saying next time include a picture so I can tell you exactly what you should do in your space.
A big thank you to our amazing producer, Catherine Heller, to Aton and the MBCR House Band, and to Affordable Interior Design, the sponsor of this podcast and the premier place to get an amazing look on a budget. Check out affordableinteriordesign.com. If you guys love the show, the very best way to support us is by spreading the word. Tell your friends or write us an awesome review on iTunes. So until next week, guys, thanks so much for joining us, and I'll talk to you soon. Bye.